My guests today are two huge choreographers and tap dancers, Christiane and Matallo from Brazil and from Philadelphia, Tim Hamilton. So Chris and Jim, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate and talking about tap dancing. It's one of my favorite dances, not only because of the tap itself, but also because of bring music as part of one show, right? So, Chris, let's start with you. Tell me about the project itself.
Our project was born like something that was very simple, and we improve a lot together. We don't have something very like inside the box. And everything is about percussion, about sounds, about music, and how the body makes the sound. And basically it's about that. And we start with a show, and this show always be moving and changing, so many ideas that we bring together, collaborate each other. And also we have our education, sorry, program. But it's amazing, you know, for me, it's the best thing to do right now in my life. Even we are very far from geographically, but we still working online. So it's amazing to do that.
Well, Jim, she gave you the best intro, best than my intro about your work.
Yeah, it's true. And I hope that all those things, that, one of the things which we really enjoy about the project, something that Chris just mentioned, is that our own education is the education that we do in the workshops. Chris's education in the United States with TAP and around the world, and my love of the art form kind of come together to allow us in the educational aspect of what we do to bring our whole life study, because Chris started when she was very young with TAP, and I did too. So it allows us to bring this experience, not just of our individual study of TAP, but also we're starting to teach the combination of Chris's life and my life together in the classroom.
Whenever I think about tap dancing, I'm thinking one style of music that comes to my mind is jazz.
Sure.
Am I right? Is that like, because then you have all different types of musical instruments, right?
Chris, do you want to take
Yes,
that?
you can tell, especially you.
Well, yeah, tap is connected to other things in our culture in the United States. It was born here, as was the evolution and application of percussive principles inside of our music jazz, as you were just mentioning. Um, there's a connection between the creation of the drum set, which happened right around the turn of the last century, say 1910, and the evolution of tap. And tap itself is a combination of different cultures. Yes, different styles came out of tap. But in the very beginning, in the Appalachian region, where a lot of our culture comes from, you had Cherokee style dancing, you had Irish style dancing, you had various kinds of rhythmic manifestations through the body with tap, with different implements at different times. Putting bottle caps on the shoes or metal objects between the toes. And there were a lot of Scot-Irish immigrants that ended up in the Appalachian region too. So a lot of these cultures came together to form what we now know as tap. And that had it started to grow in its own cultural and have its own individual cultural manifestations.
Chris, I have when we spoke a couple of days ago, I was telling you that in San Francisco, especially, that's where I live. We don't have a lot of performances, tap dance performances, I would say. We have ballet, we have different types of dance, but we don't, especially, I don't see a lot of tap performances. So how is it in Brazil?
First of all, I just want to add something about your last question about the tap. And I agree with Jim in so many ways, but it's very important to say that all developed the technique of tap came from African. Okay, it's very important because they really made this art develop like a technique. You know, have some names like Juba, like King Erastus Brown, John Bubbles, before John Bubbles, Bill Robinson. And actually in Brazil, people, when you talk about tap, they just relate tap with movies like Fred Astaire, Judy Kelly, and It's Okay. Of course, they were amazing, but there were so many other tap dancers, especially black tap dancers, that made this technique happen, you know, and so high level. But unfortunately, for the prejudice, I can say prejudice, preconceito. How you say preconceito in English? Prejudice or
Prejudice, yes.
how you say prejudice, you know, and the black tap dancers sometimes is in another are in another place, especially because and people here in Brazil, they don't have, so it's not so popular, you know, including the United States. United States, this is an art form, but it's not so how I say, not so popular like, you know, other technique or other like ballet, like jazz, you know, and people just know about some musicals, Broadway shows, or some movies like in the 40s, you know. And in Brazil, what is happening here in Brazil in 50s, the tap start to be more popular, especially with the TV happened, when the TV came and people could watch movies, like my grandfather, and he always loved to watch and try tap by himself, you know. And for me, the tap came like when I was 5 in 70s, but always be something that people watching and try to make a copy, but nobody had information, a real information. In the 80s, Brazilian people could be more close to American culture, to travel more was easier, you know. And then we could be like in New York, that people, when we have a big schools, type schools and informations to bring to Brazil.
Yeah,
And then in 90s in Brazil, the tap dance could explode anymore, like could be spread more in Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo and the south of Brazil, especially in Curitiba, and then just and never stop it. And nowadays we have so many tap dancers, but it's still small. It's a small community in Brazil.
Well, that's a beautiful thing what you're doing with the carnival in Brazil. Bring the tap to the avenues, to the big party where you, as you said, people stop, literally, they stop to watch the carnival on TV. So Jim, and how is it in the United States? Because here in San Francisco, I mean, you are on East Coast, right? So on the other side of the country, we don't see a lot of shows, a lot of tap shows. Why is that? And how is it over there?
I think anything that has any kind of real content, we're talking about art now, okay? Tap dancing is an art form. And Chris is absolutely right. People may know Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, which both of them were incredible artists, but you only have a short window of time in our culture, where this thing is from, where you could actually have tap show the art of tap dance. And what are you showing it? You're showing it in films like Flying Down to Rio. The storylines are very thin. It's not great movie making. It's not Orson Welles. You know what I mean? It's a musical that you could do on the stage, and we did. You know, we have a long tradition in Broadway in New York of like, you know, all the Cole Porter musicals, Anything Goes, No No Nanette, this kind of idea where you had a form of tap dancing, but the form of the writing of the music in those shows is a little bit different than the information or the music that came out of the Black community that actually created tap as an art form. You know, Chris was mentioning John Bubbles and, you know, all these amazing dancers, Bill Robinson. It's important to understand that the parallel of the evolution of tap and the evolution of the drum set run parallel together. And they run together through jazz, to your point, to your earlier question. These things are actually linked together in our culture. So if you're sitting in Brazil and maybe have visited the United States a couple times, it may be hard to see that no one is really listening to jazz, okay? I don't mean, you know, instrumental R&B like Kenny G and these kinds of things where the drummer is playing a side stick on beats 2 and 4. The doom, ka, the doom. That's not, I'm talking about gang, ding, gang, gang, daga da daga da daga da daga da daga da daga da da. The rhythmic fundamental, the rhythmic pulse of jazz. So just as the music has become unpopular, tap has become unpopular with contemporary tap dancers like, I'll just say all the contemporary tap dancers that dance in more of a funk style. It's their attempt at making tap contemporary. But tap is always contemporary.
Always.
Always contemporary, because it's part of the narrative of the culture of the United States and now Brazil. And
Yeah.
now Brazil, because of the hard work of the tap community, you know, which Chris is like, you know, a major part of in Brazil.
Yeah. Jim,
It's a
would you
dialogue.
say...
It's a dialogue. I'm sorry, I wanted to make one more point. This culture doesn't exist on the pop levels. The culture it's more of a dialogue, and it's a spoken language, and in that way it's identical to jazz. Boom boom da 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 ba ba. This is how the hoofers of that generation taught. They went, no, it's like this. That's where you got to hit it. It's verbal. The same way if you'd go to West Africa and you would be like, gang, 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 gang. This is how you learn it. It becomes vocal. It's part of the language center of your brain. It's not a step that you learn and remember. I mean, there is that, but really in improvisation, it's more about speech patterns. You understand what I'm saying? It's more connected to the language center of your brain. And that way of being comes from not exactly the academic world, if you know what I'm saying.
So is that like there's a body movement first, and right after the sound comes?
This whole theory of teaching, and on a philosophical and a practical level, is in showing human beings how certain motions of the body create certain sounds. So it's more connected to, and although Chris is a brilliant choreographer and can choreograph 14 pieces in one day, her technique is more out of the actual natural movement of the body that creates a sound, in much the same way as if you go, you know, bat, doom, boom, gat, baka do gong ba, baka do ba, baka do ba, baka do ba. You start out very slow and deliberately, ba, gong, doom, ba, right? The whole body is in ba. Baka do ba, 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 baka do ba. What fast is slow, done very accurately. And then you teach the brain to speak. Dong gong ba, da gong boom. With the bass drum. Da go boom. Boom boom ba. This is how we learn to play the drum set when we're very, very young. How we learn to be independent rhythms. And tap is a form of independence in a different way. When you hear a melody in a song, oftentimes when I learned it when I was a kid, the way I heard it, the way my father taught it, was you have ba bu da bu da bi da bi bu da bu da da ka do ka do ka do ba da be ka da do ba da ba do do. This is independence. You have the melody, and then you have the rhythm of what's happening inside of the tap movements as an improvisation on the rhythm of the melody itself. Ba ba da ba da ba 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 da ba da ba da ka do ba 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 do da do ga ba ba. It's the same thing that you do on a drum set in jazz. Da da ba 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 da ba ba da ga do do ba 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 do ba. You see, it's a parallel journey.
Well, it seems very easy when you say and demonstrates that way with the rhythm of the music. But let's say somebody like myself who doesn't have any coordination, no rhythm whatsoever, it seems really hard to do tap.
Amazing, you know, and what my father would have said to you is right now you're smiling, you're looking, you're processing information. You got yourself together in this beautiful show and this beautiful environment that you're in, and you picked up the pen and you were thinking about one thing and speaking another. That's a very high level of coordination.
Well, perhaps I need to take some of your and Chris's classes.
Minutes about the tap dancer that you could be if you wanted to be.
Well, we should set up another recording with the shoes on, maybe, right, Chris?
Of course, of course. Make it. Let's happen.
So, Chris, tell me about the connection between BR.US collaboration between you, basically you representing Brazil and Jim representing the United States. But how is it for you on a professional level to be on that bridge, to have that bridge?
It's such a pleasure work with him because I always looking, because again, the process that I believe in tap is more than just hit on the floor or just make some steps. But for me, it's something that you use your whole movement. And the first thing that you have to know is about who you are. You know, this is the first question that I ask for the students and people around me when we work together, even by myself, because I'm even changing. We are in a process to change and to know more by ourselves. So it's very important to know how your body can move and respect your limits. And then when you have more informations, like what is articulation, how your body can help you, and to make it easier to do that. And when I saw Jim, it's so funny because we have an amazing friend, Corinne Carroll. She's an amazing tap dancer from Philadelphia. And Corinne, the first time she just looked at me, and she was my student in my classes, in Brazilian classes. And of course, she just looked at me and said, "Hey, Christiane, I want to introduce to you an amazing friend that he knows everything from Brazil rhythms, Brazil culture." And I just, oh, okay, I wanna meet him. And it was so funny because I just thought, oh, one more American that probably he thinks that he knows everything about Brazil, like whatever. And then 16 years later, we meet each other, and she told me, "Oh, finally, Jim Hamilton will play with you, and you can do a performance together on my show." I say, "Oh, brilliant! Let's make it." And Jim was late to our rehearsal, and I was just a little, because I'm very like that. And then he very calm, very, "Hey, hi, Christiane, I'm Jim." Say, "Hey, Jim, nice to meet you, finally. By the way, our rehearsal done." And he say, "No problem. I just want to check my sounds, my pandeiro, my cajon." I say, "Okay, we don't need to rehearsal." And then when we jump out together to do our show, was amazing. I just feel him like me, like a mirror, And I say, wow, it's so amazing to share this moment with this amazing artist, and I could see his body, what I pay attention when in his body, how he could move. He wasn't just a musician, amazing musician, because sometimes you can find amazing musicians, rhythmists, including here in Brazil. We have so many, and I had opportunity to work with so many amazing. But he was different because he could feel and use his body. And I said, wow, what is that? And then I just, okay, let's make more connection, bringing information about himself, about herself, about themselves. And then through the body, the movements, then you can discover the floor and the gravity, and relate to the body with the gravity, and think in music. Just that, it's easy, it's something that it's just about connections.
I love this conversation, and I could go on and on and on, but hopefully we can do together let's do this. If you both agree, we're going to try to find a studio in San Francisco, set up some cameras over there. I think my shoes is still in Brazil, but I'll get one here. And then we can try to do some together and maybe invite other people, right? Can you do it?
Anything you want to do would be wonderful.
All right. Well, Chris, you look stunning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, thank you so much. It's
Yeah,
always
the opportunity.
a pleasure to be around you, and blessings, and we are together. Let's do more things together now and in the future.
Absolutely. In the future, very short, we're going to be talking about the Tap Dance Festival, which Chris is involved. So, Jim, thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You were such a gracious host.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Chris, thank you again.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Jim.
Bye-bye.
And thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please let us know at tips@newsupnow.org. It's right here, tips@newsupnow.org. And I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye. Be safe.